officially now passing to Hannah Grieco. She is an author, she is an editor, she is a force of nature in the lit community, and she's an instructor here at the Writers Center. So it's always a pleasure to have Hannah join us. Hannah, I will hand off to you, and thank you so much for bringing us this event.
Thank you so much for having me and all these incredible writers. Thank you, Leah. It's so wonderful to see your real face. Leah and I have worked extensively together over the last year, almost basically now. So it's wonderful to see you. Please, before I get started on this, thank you so much for being here. This is my very first book launch that is my book launch. So it's extremely exciting, and to be a part of creating something that is this important and powerful. I just didn't realize it would feel like this. So if I get emotional tonight, forgive me. The writers that participated in this collection have really changed me as a writer and editor. And not just saying that, it really was profound for me, and I'm very grateful. If you've ever been at Readings on the Pike, the monthly series I run, you know how much I love the chat. So please tonight, as our readers are sharing their work, some of our readers have never read at an event before, right? And so the chat is something really special and beautiful in virtual events. You can use that to talk in a way you can't when you're in person. And that is cool because you can talk about what's amazing about that work, and to come back, even if you've read a million times at events, to come back and see that people loved your story or your piece is very important. It is heartening and a form of art that is full of rejection and imposter syndrome. So please tonight, if you are able or interested, use that chat to express how much you love all the incredible work that is being put out before you tonight. I think the best way to introduce this story is to actually read the short introduction that I wrote, the introduction that I wrote for the book, because I think it really tells it better than anything I could sort of come up with. So I'm going to read that, and then we're going to have 9 readers tonight sharing stories from the collection, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So that is how we're going to do it. Give me 1 second. When I began writing, all I wrote were parenting essays. Essays in 1,000 words or so, with a neat little beginning, middle, and end. There was always a problem to be solved, always a clear path forward, and everything got resolved around 800 words in, with a paragraph or 2 of reflection afterward. A neat little present tied with a neat little bow. The end. These essays did well. They landed in good publications, and they made my own parents proud. But sometimes, every once in a while, I'd slip in something horrible and real, something that lurked under the surface. I'd write a sentence somewhere hidden in the middle about how I wasn't so sure about motherhood, about whether I was able to keep doing it, or about whether or not I wanted to keep doing it. About moments of anger so big, I thought they might swallow me, or moments where I felt like I was sinking, shrinking, crumbling, about being nothing more than mother and failing even at that, about needing desperately to be more. The messages I received after publishing these pieces were dramatic. Grandmothers felt sorry for my children. Strangers threatened acts of violence, and some shocked mothers called me abusive or neglectful. But email after email from other mothers whispered, yes, yes, yes. So I started writing more sentences that told the truth. I left the problems unsolved or solved them messily, humanly, and imperfectly. I redefined love and motherhood in my head and in my writing, abandoning sainthood and the impossible chafing expectations that saturated my daily life. I wrote hard words. I wrote fewer essays for established parenting magazines and instead wrote shorter, more vulnerable literary works. Sometimes true, sometimes fiction, but fiction is still true on some level, isn't it? If there's a vampire, there's a lust for blood underneath her story. If there's a ghost, there's a fear of or fascination with death. I wanted to read more stories about what parenting really felt like to others, not the Hallmark card variety, but the 3 a.m. insomnia parenting. the fear parenting, the anger, the grief, the love bigger than all of it parenting. Beautiful, not because of its perfection, but because of its ugly persistence, its messy, human, imperfect beauty. When I put out the call for submissions to this flash anthology, the response was enormous. Writers from all over the world sent in their speculative parenting stories. And we redefined speculative too. Supernatural, horror, fantasy, but also the stories nobody wants or expects parents to tell. Speculative because these stories aren't supposed to exist, but they do. They breathe, they rage, they laugh, they scream, and they fly. Thank you for reading this book, and thank you for giving space to what's real and scary and strange in the act of parenting our children. And on that note, I'd like to introduce Aubrey Hirsch.
Hi, I'm Aubrey Hirsch. I'm going to read a story called Bad Boys that, is definitely not inspired by true events. They seemed like accidents at first. Jacob's heel in the soft tissue of her diaphragm, Harley's head bouncing off her cheekbone. Perhaps I was tickling them too hard, Stella mused as she cataloged her new bruises after putting the boys to bed. What parent didn't have an inventory of accidental injuries inflicted by their offspring? Stella sometimes talked about them with the other moms and dads at the park. A black eye from a pitched ball too swiftly returned, a rolled ankle from a clumsy bump on the stairs, a pinched finger from a falling toy box lid. After each story, the parents would laugh together in a reassuring way. Isn't it funny, they said, what these children do to us? But the further the boys got from toddlerhood, the more calculated the mishaps seemed to be. Like Harley, waiting for the exact moment her index finger landed on the jamb to slam the door. Or when Jacob abruptly dismounted from her shoulders, a limp lock of her hair still clutched in each hand. Ouch, she would say gently, pointing to the blooming flush or beating blood or gathering film of pus. That hurts, Mama. The boys would offer bashful smiles she once interpreted as apologetic, but now read as faintly joyful. Ouch, she'd say again, letting the pain creep into her voice a little. That hurts. Stella asked her husband, are they hurting you? The boys, are they hurting you? Hurting me? No, they're hurting me, she said. You're smaller than I am. Maybe I just don't notice it. His work was waiting. Stella could always tell when he was done with a conversation. She'd stopped telling the stories at the park as well. The reassuring laughter had long since faded to worried glances. The other parents' expressions were no longer amused, but sympathetic. They seemed to be avoiding her. Sometimes she caught Harley's eye from across the playground. He wasn't looking at her, not really. He was looking at her parts. The boys hunted in the yard for spiders and worms to bring into her bed. Jacob found an injured bee with its stinger still intact and hid it in the sleeve of her sweater. There was something primal about their behavior, instinctual even. Before they learned to tie their shoes, the boys could loop the long silhouettes of their footy pajamas into nooses. When she took away their craft scissors, they chewed their nails to points. They sharpened their teeth on the chipped ceramic edges of the bathtub. The more she thought about it, the further back it went. Jacob's shallow laugh, latch pulling her nipples, the way Harley picked at her skin when she rocked him, how they seemed to divide the night, each hungry in a different hour, so she could never really rest. Further back than that even, the morning sickness, the excessive weight gain, even for twins, the way they shifted around each other in her womb to rub their bones over her most vulnerable parts. For weeks, they took turns kicking her ribs, one firing up just as the other drifted off to sleep. The obstetrician who inspected her busted bones said he'd never seen such symmetrical fractures. And now they came at her with brightly colored blocks, with heavy booted action figures, with splinters peeled from colored pencils. They ground their sidewalk chalk to dust and blew it in her eyes, made tripwires from the strings of their toy guitars, perfected the art of delivering paper cuts with construction paper. There was nothing they couldn't use, couldn't weaponize. Stella cut her hair short, wore long sleeves even in summer, but still the list of her wounds grew. There was no bit of her soft flesh or exposed skin that was safe. What little was left of her, they'd wipe away in time. After all, they were still only boys. They were getting smarter, stronger, bigger. She thought about it whenever she put food on their plates, when she dropped them off at school, when she took them to the dentist for regular cleanings. All the good things she did for them, they'd turn against her in the end. She tried to remember what she used to look like before the ill-healed broken nose, the twisted posture from her wobbly left knee, the half eyebrow lost to a flying birthday candle. She used to be pretty, she thought, but her sons would never know that. She saw their mother in the mirror, a lumpy monster with bloodshot eyes and thinning hair. If they loved her at all, she couldn't see how. But she told the boys she loved them often, more out of desperation than affection, for surely they must already know. If the warm meals and soft beds and bathing of dirty limbs and spoons full of medicine weren't enough proof, then there were these, the stretch marks, the crutches, the welts, the scabs, the scars, her crooked fingers, the destruction of the body as a memoir of her motherhood. She must love them, she thought, and sometimes said aloud, to take all this and come for more, who would do that but a mother? Thank you.
Hi, I am K.S. Walker. You can also call me Shay. And my story is called Such a Fun Age. What are you reading? You look up from your book to the stranger who just eased onto the far end of your bench, and then up to Evan on the merry-go-round, and then back to the stranger. Oh, it's a fantasy, you say, your eyes already searching the page for the sentence you left behind. It takes a moment, but you settle back into a rhythm. You're ready to turn the page when the stranger in the red coat shifts. You can tell by the air between you that she's ready to ask another question. You surreptitiously peek at Evan, moving your head as little as possible, hoping that talking Tina can't tell your eyes have left the book. Evan's round brown face, smiling out of a hooded jacket, comes back into view. She still hasn't said anything. You finally exhale and lift a rough corner to turn it. What is he, 5? Interrupting Ingrid rasps, nodding towards your child. No, you answer without telling her that he's almost 3 because it's only white ladies who would mistake you're barely not a toddler for a child that much older, and she doesn't need to know his age anyway. You cross your right knee over your left, shifting your weight away from playground Pamela. You raise the paperback so that it almost touches your nose, but you can see Evan ease off the merry-go-round and tread through the wood chips towards the slide. Mama, look, Evan croons from the top of the structure. It's a blur of navy. He's whooshed down the slide. His 2 feet are barely on the ground before he's running back around toward the stairs. He could play here for hours without you. That's the point. You deserve this. You push papers from 9 to 5. You put a vegetable on the plate at dinner and make the kid eat it. You hang artwork, you kiss boo-boos, you hide, you seek, you bite your tongue until you taste blood when he's not giving you a hard time. It's just that he's having a hard time. And then read bedtime stories when all you really, really want is a second glass of Malbec. You're both the hero and the bad guy. And today, you even remember to shower. You deserve a small moment that belongs to you and only you. Don't you? Don't you? Satisfied that the kiddo is safely occupied, you lower your eyes. You'd kill to finish this scene. The playground drops away as magic-wielding half-men, half-beasts roar into battle. You grip the book a little tighter, eyes scanning a little faster, and is she fucking serious right now? Honestly, who still smokes anymore? And at a playground? Does she smoke around her own kids? Wait, where are her kids? You let your annoyance straighten your spine and give lung cancer Laura a pointed stink eye. She winks through the nicotine haze. You arch around to bring the swing set and the jungle gym into view. They're just as empty as when you arrived. You know what I love about kids? They're just so malleable. You can shape them, craft them into anything. Nothing is impossible at this age. Is her voice really that scratchy, or do you imagine it more so because you find her abrasive? Look, lady, you start to say, turning back to establish some boundaries. It's what your therapist is always telling you to do, right? Only Evan calls out to you. Mama, he says. And it's the same voice you hear from across the hall when he's talking in his sleep. It sounds like he could have murmured it against your ear, or it could be a whisper carried across the ocean. You look back to the slide, then the merry-go-round that's still spinning. If a ride spins and your child isn't on it, was he even there at all? Panic levers you forward, causing your book to tumble into the wood chips. Anxiety claws at your chest, your throat. You circle the play structure in disbelief. You cannot reconcile that your child was just here. And now? Such a fun age. A voice behind you cackles, and you spin back towards the bench, but the wicked one is gone too, blinked into the folds. There's the slowing creak of metal on metal. Wind rustles dead leaves across the playground. A noise so small escapes your throat, you can't be certain you made any sound at all. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Leslie Walker Trahan. The story I'm reading tonight is called Listen. I don't like telling stories, but tonight I make an exception. A storm is coming, and my daughter is already in bed with a blanket pulled up to her chin. There once was a girl, I say, an orphan. I give the girl a foe to fight, a curse to lift, something, a bird perhaps beats against the window. What is that, my daughter asks. Don't worry, I say. The girl in the story gets a few wins, a truth uncovered, a power revealed, but a good story is not always easy to tell. There are losses too. Her loyal confidant, her home, her village. Who is knocking at the window, my daughter asks. No one, I say, it's just the rain. In the story, I introduce a new villain, one more dangerous than any the girl has known before. The girl is frightened where she thought she would be fearless, ambivalent where she thought she would be unwavering. Her powers, so recently revealed, fail her at a critical moment. The girl wonders things she's never wondered before. How did this conflict start? What really happened to her parents? Why is there no one to protect her? She's a child, after all. And what is she to make of those strange dreams she's been having? Bared teeth, bloodstains on her hands. My daughter looks up, eyes wide. What happens now? When the villain arrives, the girl turns away. She once thought the fight was the purpose of her life, but she no longer believes the purpose of a life can be so thinly cataloged. She puts down her weapons, and the villain, seeing the girl's hesitation, falters. Outside, the rain's battering is fierce but rhythmic. My daughter rests her head against her pillow. This story is too long, she says. Get to the battle already. There is no battle, I say, only a girl. My daughter yawns. Her eyes become slits. I get it, she says. No, you don't, I tell her. Listen. I pinch her legs. I pinch her arms. I pinch her cheeks, the ones I used to kiss as she was falling asleep. Listen, I whisper into her already dreaming ears. There is more. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Meg Pokrass, and I'll be reading a story co-written with Rosie Garland called The Worried Baby. Sherman's lips are rosy and full on the bottom. There is more than a grain of disobedience in his barely open eyes, born 12 hours ago. Woo woo, it's time to go, a tall lipstick nurse says. The pain drugs are wearing off and they will not give me more. My legs are returning. I'm calling him Sherman, I say. Like the tank, she roars. She wants me to be happy, even without drugs. After my father, I reply, but she laughs right over me. I'm out of here, yells Cheer Up Nurse, and I feel a vibration in my neck. I want to go with her, with anyone, to a movie, a bar, a crummy restaurant. Tired nurses complain like schoolgirls in the corridor. You got yourself a baby rebel and you got to work your magic, mommy, says another nurse, quieter but mean. Sherman is not latching. Quiet but mean nurse glowers at me. I'm so lucky, and it's unfair to be this lucky and so clueless. She looks at my baby as though she wants to take him and handle things right. I think about how a partner would be so good in this moment, a husband to roll eyes with, or a woman, anything but the nothing surrounding my bed. Someone to say, you two will soon be a good milking team. My father did not live to meet his suckless grandson. I can hear the way he said on the phone, "You were the funniest kid," when I called from the room he died in. I remember how his voice opened and closed with a squeak. People want a sepia child. I sniff Sherman's worried hair, fiddle with his droopy little socks. "What's wrong with my milk?" I query the doctor. He winks as if this is the most charming of maternal questions. "Nothing is wrong with it," he says. "Your baby is too full of worries." How can a baby be worried? What has he got to worry about? I didn't know then that my breasts were killing machines. There are mirrors we can handle together, and there are mirrors that are too much for us. By the time I have my breasts removed, Sherman is married to a woman with glittery eyelids. She points her lips at my cheeks before planting them on my face. "Mom," Sherman says, "we're worried." Sherman is not a worried old man, I say to my grown-up baby. The face of my son has become like the moon, too dreamy to count on. If I could only drink a glass of milk without spitting it up, maybe his wrinkles would smooth out. He does the cryptic, I do the quick. I give him a head start as he has to grapple with questions I can't make sense of. I used to hope we'd finish together, but he's always way ahead or way behind. He hands me a warmed up glass of milk, and the pale light of worry pours from his face. Thank you. Thank you.
And Susan, you are next.
Hi, I'm Susan Calvillo. This is Monster Sighting, circa March 2020. I arrive at the hospital for a non-stress test, which seems a silly name in these frightful times. The anesthesia is administered in the same hospitals COVID-19 patients are admitted for treatment, same building, different floors. I hit a security checkpoint at the lobby's sliding glass doors, but somebody is already in line. I wait outside to respect the 6-foot distance rule. A mother who hopes her 6-year-old son has pneumonia because she dreads the alternative cuts in front of me. I know she doesn't mean to. One person standing 6 feet back from one other person doesn't look like a line. And this is an emergency entrance, and I don't look like I'm in an emergency because I'm not yet. I lose count how many people in a bigger panic cut me. I'm invisible despite having 3 heads. None of them wear masks, not even the sick ones. Why am I not wearing a mask or a helmet or an entire back suit? Finally, when there's a lull, a handsome nurse waves me forward. I imagine he has a 5 o'clock shadow or maybe 3 days worth of 5 o'clock shadows, which I can't see behind his mask, but he smiles with his eyes and gives me a medical mask, hand sanitizer, and a masked escort and scrubs. The escort takes me to the next checkpoint, and I undergo an interrogation in which all the correct answers are no. My temperature is taken temporally. I'm given a new escort, and I'm asked to sanitize my hands every time I enter or exit a space, even though the escort presses the elevator buttons, even though I touch nothing. The escort operates under the assumption that everything is toxic, including me. I'm left in a lobby where the only other 2 people are wearing head-to-toe suits, masks, goggles, an empty baby carrier between them. I try not to stare as I get flashbacks of all of the science fiction horror I watched with my hands over my eyes. If this is a live action film, where do I stand? Is the hero virologist nearby in his lab? Are there vomit zombies coming around the corner? A technician finds me, straps me in for monitoring, confirms that I have 2 heartbeats in addition to my own. And all 3 of my heartbeats are reacting at acceptable rates. Then before I know it, she puts me right back on the elevator, directs me to go that way and keep going and going. This is the first time I have no escort, and I'm lost in a windowless corridor where every 10 feet a sign says, "Stop, go back." But the words are directed at medical personnel and staff, and the tone of that voice, "keep going and going," drives me on. I take a long hall that turns and turns, then turns into rows of beds reserved for COVID-19 patients, lining the walls, 100 or more, empty, sterile, waiting. A chill runs down my spine. I have stumbled upon a prophecy. These beds will be filled. Even in the dim light, the white bed sheets are blinding. I should not be here. I try not to breathe. But the double doors await at the end of the hall. I see the first security checkpoint in their glass windows. The silence is eerie, but a sense of calm comes over me. I am safest when I am alone. Only the germs in this sterile sanctuary are the ones that I brought with me. I put as much distance between me and the beds. I force my way out, bursting through the double doors. The staff on the other side jumps at the side of me as if I'm a monster. Even the handsome nurse's hands go up in fright. And I realize my place in this thriller. I am the jump scare. I am the monster. I have the potential to carry, and so do they. And eventually, we all will fulfill that potential. Thanks so much. And I just want to do a quick thank you and shout out to Hannah, Leah, and Alternating Current Press and the Writers Center for putting this together. You guys are amazing. Thanks for everybody being here. It's so great to be reading here with you.
Hi, I'm Jiksung Cheung, and this story is called Landfall. In the time that my mother has been missing, the skies have turned a gray, roiling mass. The radio is calling it the most violent typhoon to make landfall in 32 years. We've looked everywhere, and there's nowhere else left except here in the ruins of the abandoned Wafeng housing estate, where my mother and I once lived in a tiny room on the 6th floor. In the clearing outside, a squall tears at my flimsy raincoat and drags an old banyan tree, snapping and splintering to the ground. A battered no trespassing sign flits overhead and ricochets off the crumbling facade. I find an embroidered shoe near the entrance, swirling in the ankle-deep floodwater like a goldfish in the murk. Ma, is that you in there? In response, there is only the whistling of the wind. What on earth could she be doing here, and why now? I try to recall the last time we were all together. Maggie, the boys, me, my mother, sitting around our dining table, the food getting cold, the nursing home pamphlet open to the page where an elderly couple beams at the camera, surrounded by family. If that is what you have decided, she says. And then after a pause, she adds, you always choose what is best for your family. She doesn't smile. She doesn't pat my hand to reassure me that she understands. She doesn't touch the fish cheek I place in her bowl, but her words slide between my ribs so that even after Maggie and I clear the dishes and the boys are fast asleep, even after my mother quietly shuts the door to her room and turns off the light, all I can hear is, you always choose what is best for you. I stumble through the flooded corridors, flashlight in hand, until I see the old provision store tucked beneath the stairwell where my mother used to work. The shutters on one side have collapsed, revealing a row of empty shelves. I think of my mother stacking tins of oily fried dace, her thick black hair in a knot, the radio behind the counter crackling a Teresa Teng love song. She pauses in front of the radio before changing the channel and then tells me to finish my homework before she locks up. I find the other shoe on a landing about halfway up, waterlogged and torn at the sole. The whistling continues unabated. I step into a childhood home at the end of a long corridor on the 6th floor. The room is empty, save for the candle on the floor painting the peeling walls a flickering orange and the figure by the window struggling with the handle. Ma, are you hurt? I say. What are you doing? She is surprised to see me, but then her expression hardens. It's rusted shut, she says. Can't get it open. Come on, Ma. I put an arm around her shoulder, but she pulls away. Just let me do this, she says. Come on, we shouldn't even be here. I take her by the wrist, but even now I'm surprised by her strength. She wrenches free and bangs a bony fist onto the rusty handle. A cry of frustration escapes her lips. Ma, have you lost your mind? I shine the flashlight on her hand where an ugly purple blotch is already pooling beneath the skin. We can talk at home. I didn't ask you to come. This is what happens when we talk. Words fly out of our mouths, but we never seem to understand each other. What do you want then, Ma? Just help me, she says, please. Outside, the rain surges like waves on rock. The whistling is louder too, coming from all directions, rising and falling as if seeking harmony, but never quite finding it. I realize she'll never leave this place until she does whatever she's here to do. Fine, I say. I raise the heavy flashlight and bring it down sharply on the handle. Once, twice, a crack, and then something gives way. The window explodes, ejected by a mighty pressure. The candle goes out, and I remember. The day of the big typhoon 32 years ago. Ma says the store will be flooded, so I wait for her under the dinner table, wrapped in a thick blanket, the wind whistling all around. Suddenly, the window bursts open and I'm engulfed by a sound that I can feel in the pit of my stomach, a deep, thunderous drone, beautiful like the long, solitary call of a blue whale, but also infinitely terrifying, like the howl of some unfathomable beast, so loud that even the floor shakes. I curl up into a ball under the blanket and call for her, not realizing that she is already beside me. I'm here, she says, pulling me deep into her arms. It's all right, I'm here. My mother listens now, silvery hair plastered to her face, enraptured by the haunting harmony of the typhoon barreling as it did a lifetime ago, along winding corridors, between cracks in the walls, and through the room on the 6th floor with the open window. She finds my hand and clutches it, now and in the past. We listen for a while. I'm here too, I say. I know. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lydia Kim. My story is called Bumps. I have large breasts, hypochondria, and a maternal history of mammary cancer. So I have been diligent. In the shower, I raise one arm, soap the cursed sac, massage the perimeter. The joke is, even a healthy breast is notoriously bumpy. Sliced, it's like a cross-section of an orange, pulpy triangles pinned by a nipple. The self-exam is both recommended and pointless, performed as it is by an amateur. I dreamed of bumps taking up residence in the exurbs of my body, marble-sized blips on the back of my neck, the crook of my thighs, the tops of my feet. I dreamt of a single lump creeping along my fascia, propelled by peristaltic power, eventually expelling itself out a pore. The children began as bumps. I noticed a new bump in my armpit, another above my top rib. I went to the doctor. Not cancer, she said, just breast tissue. Colonies of breast tissue, scouts. Keep an eye on them, she said, making it my problem. I poked at them, palpated them the way one mindlessly wiggles a baby tooth. I stuck my hand down my shirt and worried them all day. I think this encouraged them, as if it were a kind of passive exercise. I drew an outline around each one with a black marker, and they outgrew their boundaries month after month. I considered the elective surgery to remove them, but was ashamed. I'd waited too long. They were my problem now. One day during my perimeter massage, my fingers slipped inside the armpit bump. It had a mouth, slippery gums. We startled each other. A tongue, lips, it cried. Instinctively, I cupped it and shushed it. I felt a draft whoosh into my right rib and realized the other bump had a mouth as well, and that it was also crying. I stood in the shower like a wet stone, 2 crying bumps among the older, silent ones. I toweled off, held both my arms up, and turned from side to side to look at the bumps in the mirror. Small, soft mouths with glossy gums sitting at the peak of each bump. They hiccuped between wails until they stopped crying. I had to lower one arm to stroke the other bump. I had the feeling I imagine people have when they get a new dog, an immediate desire to take care of and be liked by tiny creatures. Above the mouths, each bump had gentle divots where eyes might have been, and something dark pushed against the dips. They looked fragile, cute. They looked like babies pressing their way face first through milky plastic. It was easy to name them, Army for the armpit bump, and Eve for the other. I had to sleep like someone falling backward in outer space, arms flung wide. That first night, they slept well. I fed each mouth with a dropper, some warmed broth. I'm allergic to dairy. And they napped a great deal, emitting tiny snores. They smacked their lips when peckish. I boiled a whole young chicken for broth
and ordered a set of droppers, ascending in size. I fed the bumps every 2 hours. I quit my job. Motherhood meant so many things. I'd never be able to wear sleeveless tops. I'd have to walk like a bodybuilder to avoid smashing the children. I'd have to shop when they napped so that lest they cried while I was out posting a letter or pumping gas. I sent up a prayer of thanks that I did not sweat much and never had body odor. I practiced telling prospective partners about their possible step bumps. I understood that cats might hiss when I approached. Like all children, they grew teeth, lost teeth, fought with each other and with me. Army developed an allergy to chicken. Eve went through a phase where she only ate peanut butter, a mess. They pushed my buttons, wanted to stay up late. My trapezius muscles grew thick and strong. I dreamed of the children growing arms and grabbing at my nipples, reaching to stick things up my nose. They went through puberty, sprouting hair, and then middle age, losing it. We had almost 10 good years. The few hairs around their divots turned thin, then gray. Their lips chapped, they took less and less vegetable broth. Their contours went to jelly. One day, they expired. No more wails from my dark places. I finally went for the surgery, cradled the Ziploc bag all the way home, placed them in the freezer. My babies, I say, thumbing the frost from their lips. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not gonna read after that. My gosh, that was wonderful, Lydia. That was absolutely gorgeous. Thank you, Hannah and Leah, for having me here and for including me in an anthology. My little short story is called Sugar Tit. I'm DeMisty Bellinger. So this is Sugar Tit. Was stored in adipose tissues, persistent organic pollutions, or POPs, as well as PCBs, PCDDs, PCDFs, and various toxic metals, such as lead and mercury. Monisha was a little premature by Tatum's and my estimate, and they are a little small for a 2-month-old child, but we love them just the same, and they seem to be growing into their placeholder name, even at that young age. Maybe they will identify as she and have a baby of their own one day. In spite of what is in breast milk, I am nursing them. We're sitting under the government-supplied UV-protected porch shield, basking in the safest rays of sun. I'm nearly asleep when Tatum nudges me lightly on my back with his big toe. Hey, he says, I have a better idea. Harmful chemicals now superseded the healthy fats, the nutrients in mother's milk, and not just human milk. Of course, if it affects our milk production, why not cows? Why not goats? Breast is best is now a dated and dangerous slogan reserved for the impoverished and the so-called middle-class mothers who cannot afford manufactured formula for offspring. For us, breast is good enough. Tatum holds a stuffed cloth made conical, similar to a pastry piping tube. Is that my old stained shirt? I turn slightly to him. Unlatched, Manisha's eyes blink sleepily. Milk spills freely from their fat lips. Feeding children tainted milk perpetuates the class divide. Breastfed children are more susceptible to neural tube defects, stagnated or stunted growth, and other medical conditions making them less able to compete in this hyper-capitalized economy. It's clean, he says. What is this? I have my suspicions, but I want to hear him say it. We're survivors, he says. I mean, our people been through some shit, right? Our female ancestors were forced into wet nursing. Tatum, breast is good enough. No, it ain't, Deja. We watch as the rich folks keep getting richer, the kids excelling in everything, ours maintain the status quo or worse, get dumber. Don't say dumber. I mean, if our ancestors survived on this shit, which got us to where we are today, then it can get Monisha somewhere. I only want what's best for the baby. I mull it over. Iris is conceding. Not all of them survived, I say. And yes, I get it. I feel guilty every day. Bad enough to have had a baby nowadays, sure. And I do feel like I'm feeding them poison. Still, we can't give them a sugar tit. We know processed sugar ain't good for teeth and gums. It's not exactly a sugar tit, he says. Then what's in it? He got down on his haunches and held out the bundle to me. Whatever is inside is tied in with hemp cord. I did some research on all the nutrients growing babies need. Breast milk, healthy breast milk, has about 75% protein, water, fats, carbs, and vitamins. They need sodium, A, C, and D, calcium, and iron, some other things. So I looked at foods that have these like bananas and spinach, and I boiled them down. And yeah, I added sweetener, but it's added sugar-free. But baby, it's chemical-free too. I look away from Tatum and toward our child. Their lips are still open, forming an O shape, waiting for a nipple. Their tiny fist makes the sign for milk. Pull, pull, pull. Just try it, Tatum says. I think about what it means to be a mother today, when there is an insurmountable wedge between wealth and poverty and between health and unhealthy. Even with working, even with our advanced degrees, Tatum and I would never be able to cross that divide. If we continue to limit Manisha, neither would they. Give it here, I say. I take the sugar tip from Tatum and give it to Manisha. They are uncertain at first, but they take it in their mouth, suckle, their eyes close. The folds from Tatum's knot job look like flower petals. This appearance of flower, of growth, makes me think it's already working. They will thrive soon. Soon they are asleep, their mouths slack and spilling a few drops of brown milk. Thank you.
I am Kendra Fortmeyer. I'm our last reader. Hopefully y'all can hear me. I see some nods. What a delight. Thank you to everyone who read before me. You were all incredible. I'm just in awe of everybody here. Thank you to Hannah, Leah, alternating current, Writer Center, and all of you for coming. I want to provide just a quick explanation because I'm nervous that my story does not make sense read out loud. So I'm a very new mom. My boy will turn 11 weeks old this week. So when Hannah put out her call for subs, I was not yet a mother, but I was thinking an awful lot about the things I was excited to teach my son when he got here. And since this is a speculative anthology, it's what I would teach my son if I were an escaped sea witch. So that's that. Thank you, everyone, again. This is lessons I will teach my son. Take care for cast irons. After cleaning, immediately dry and wipe down with a towel dipped in oil until they glisten. When you think fondly of someone, tell them. Don't listen to people who say should. Each new experience, even unpleasant, is intrinsically interesting. Pay attention. Fairy tales endure because there is something true in them. See also myths, legends, mountains. In fairy tales, there's a magic and a danger in the number 3. Sunsets are slippery things. Enjoy them swiftly. For sauces, let onions cook fully before adding tomatoes or wine. For hurricanes, stay away from the windows. Hunker on the good dry wood of the floor next to me. If you are thrown into water so deep that you cannot tell which way is up, carefully let out a single bubble of air slip from your lips and follow it to the surface. Never walk away from a pot of boiling oatmeal. Never forget, your feelings are valid. Never listen to people who say, shh, shh, shh. If someone is trying to drown out your voice, ask yourself why. Ocean waves break, shh, 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 on the shore in sets of 3. Sea level rise will happen in your lifetime. I am sorry for this. I didn't do it, but I was there. If someone tells you to keep something secret from me, especially if they are hurting you, tell me immediately, no matter what. Tattoo this in your bones. The high tides are highest when the moon is full, but also when it is new, which is to say, question what you think you know. For example, do not heed the singing of the sea cliffs at night. And if a green-eyed girl with hair cascading like sunset-kissed waves bid you follow her to the beach, the waves coming in, shh, 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 on the shore, don't. Really don't. Beware too the talk of dull-eyed men with the scent of seaweed on their breath. Their minds are barnacle hollow, and their masters would have you share their fate. Beware especially the singing of the sea cliffs at night. If you are ever doused in drink and fool enough to walk the sea cliffs at night and meet a girl with green eyes and hair cascading like waves beneath the full moon, and she extends her hand, do not take it. Do not become doused in drink. After an ice storm, nick tree bark with one thumbnail to see which limbs survived. Look for a pale moon of green. But do not trust reflected moons, and do not trust sea green. Do not trust promises written in sand. Do not trust whispers that you are the chosen one. Do not accept invitations down dark alleys, even if they're doused in promises that they know something about you. They know why you've always felt different. Do not trust whispers that you will rule beneath the waves. Do not listen especially to whispered lies about your mother by green-eyed girls or the distant singing of the sea cliffs. Insist they have me mistaken for someone else. Move through the world with the lightness and freedom that comes of being nobody special. Feel the lightness of the wind in your hair. Remember that to be nobody special is a blessing, that to be a prince is to be a target for assassination, that kings never die peacefully of old age. Remember to appreciate the small things, the warmth of the sun on your skin, the singing of the crickets in the tall, fragrant grasses, the juice of a fresh peach running down your chin. Remember on your weakest nights, when the full moon pulls shining at the tides, to stop your ears with wax against the singing of the sea cliffs, to write down the small pleasures, sunshine, grasses, air, in groups of 3, and to read them fiercely over and over like a spell that can keep you here. Make yourself strong because I cannot always protect you. Write your own spells because mine cannot always keep you here. And if none of these things, if you find yourself doused or no in drink, sinking beneath the waves with the hands of green-eyed girls twined in your hair and the singing of the sea cliffs in your bones, remember how I loved you, how before you breathed, I loved you, and forgive me for all I've done, how I took you from everything to give you the sun. Yeah.
Okay, so that was a taste of our anthology, and I think you can tell how incredibly special it is. Yes, we have more readings coming up. In a minute, I'm going to ask Jennifer to post our next one. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, readers. Tonight, the first opening night is the hardest, of course, to read at. You were amazing, every single one of you. This whole book is like this. This whole book is full of fiction and nonfiction that just felt, it's almost impossible to describe. And all the submissions that we received were like this. They were so full of all of these huge parenty feelings. And so I'm so grateful to all of you who submitted. And I'm just so grateful to be a part of this project. Jennifer Marvin is also someone who wrote a story for us in this book, and she owns Page Nation, and she just put our February 15th event. We have a bit of a book tour coming up. We have new events being posted somewhat regularly, and I will be tweeting about them. So please come on the 14th, all different readers. We have readings on the Pike coming up. We have all sorts of stuff. We have an AWP reading. We have a lot of opportunities to read and to share this book with you. If all of our readers tonight and anyone else who's in the anthology, if you could put, if you're on Twitter or social media, if you could put your information right now in the chat, please follow all of these writers, because they'll be talking about the book too and about their own work and other journals, and they're all wonderful. Leah, could you put your, do you have your novel that you could hold up, Leah? Leah has an incredible novel out. Did you not bring it? Oh, you go get it. She has an amazing novel. Our publisher, I don't know if you realize what Leah does. In addition to running the whole press, she like designed the whole book, including the cover. She did all the copy editing. I'm a developmental editor. I am not a copy editor. I mean, Leah did everything, right? And is in charge of all of that. And Leah wrote a novel and launched it while all of this was happening during a massive forest fire that threatened her house in Colorado. So that's a lot, and everyone should buy Leah's novel and read it as well. And it's an amazing press to be a part of, Alternating Current.
Before I run off and show it to you, I did just post the list that's on Twitter.
Oh, wonderful.
And that list has everybody that I know of who's in the anthology who has a Twitter account. If you're not in it, please just let me know and I will add you to it. But you can find each other in there as well. And I can show you my novel if you want. I can also show you. I have the
oh, and Leah has many of us are still waiting.
I know.
Shipping is
Look
so
at that.
slow. Look at it.
There you go. Part 1, Shadows. And it looks beautiful inside. I won't say that's because I was the typesetter for it or anything, but it's got some illustrations. So for the rest of the night, you guys can get 40% off with the code that I posted several times over there. And we'll talk about something special we can do during all of the readings. So for like Pagination, next reading up, we'll do something special for that too. So everybody will want to be there. All right, back.
Thank you again. Thank you, all of you. And I will pass this back to Zach Powers now.
I believe all I have to say is thank you so much. Please come back to the Writer Center in the future, virtually or in person. And I'm so excited to attend future events, to read the book when I get it. And you're all wonderful people. And thank you all so much for being here.